Sorry, we're late. Hey, good morning, good morning. Can I have approval from the meeting from the notes from March 22nd, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Here's what we'll do this. We'll hear from the public on.
Mr.
any
Chairman,
subject.
Mr. Chairman, we have no public for general, no comments for general
Oh,
public
okay,
comment.
let's skip it then. Let's go to staff update.
All right, before we get started, just a reminder that in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meetings and agendas were posted and furnished to all news and media outlets and persons requesting notification. All right, we have a total of 7 project applications for the summer FY24 cycle, 3 rural and 4 urban. If approved, it would add a total of 238 acres to the Greenbelt program at a cost of about $4.5 million in Greenbelt funds. 6 of the 7 are fee simple once again, no conservation easements again this cycle. And our total match being offered is $2.8 million. This shows the geographics on Johns Island, Main Road Park, and the 2 Betsy Carrison Nature Trail projects are located just outside of the urban. So now we'll take a look at the funding requests for each project. Again, we have the 3 projects on James Island in the rural column, Betsy Carrison Nature Trail Phase 2, Phase 3, and the Main Road Park acquisition. The total request from the rural funds would be $2.4 million. And if approved, that would leave a balance of just under $17.9 million in the rural funds. Next are our urban projects, and the first one is the Beefield Community Park project on James Island. That request is for just over $712,000. And again, that is an urban unincorporated request. And we knew this was coming as we were doing our 5-year plan review last year. We knew that the urban unincorporated was forward spent at over $4 million. So if this were approved, that would extend the deficit to negative $4.7 million. We'd still have $2.6 million left in the lifetime allocation balance for urban unincorporated. Now, this property would also qualify for the small landowner program. Small landowner program has about $50,000 left in that. So to be able to fund this project, we would either need to your recommendation to council on potentially recapitalizing the small landowner program, which can fund projects in both the urban and rural areas. Next project is the town of Mount Pleasant. It's another Mount Pleasant Way project. Request is for $620,200. This one would be along Park Avenue and Carolina Park Boulevards in northern Mount Pleasant. If approved, that would leave Mount Pleasant a balance of over $1 million and plenty in the lifetime balance as well. City of North Charleston is requesting $734,500. If approved, leaving them with over $3.8 million in their current allocation. Town of Sullivan's Island with their minor improvement project for beach access. That request is $51,000, which would just about zero out their current allocation. Leaving them a request is for $2.1 million, leaving just under $3.1 million for the next cycle in FY24. And over $80,000 in the lifetime allocation. And total rural and urban, just over $4.5 million requested from Greenbelt, and just under, if approved, $20.1 million that would be available for the rest of the cycle, or for the rest of the year. Any questions on the table? Okay. We'll move right into our first project. I'll give a brief summary of each project and then turn it over to the presenter for a more in-depth look at their projects. First one is the Betsy Carrison Nature Trail Phase 2, which is being requested by Kiowa Island Natural Habitat Conservancy. It is a fee simple request in the rural area. It is also a reimbursement request. If approved, it would protect 15.3 acres. Land protection specialist with the Kiowa Conservancy. He's going to come and give you his presentation. Collie, we've got your laser pointer ready
Nice.
on the mouse because that one will not work.
Okay. This will click slide.
Yeah, down, up or down.
Okay, good deal. Good morning. Thank you all again. This is awesome to be before y'all. Again, I think we have a couple very exciting projects to present to you. Again, Betsy Carrison Nature Trail Phase 2 is the first one I will present. I'm Collie Farah. I'm the land preservation specialist for the Kiowa Conservancy. And I've also got several other colleagues with me here today. So again, as a recap, the Kiowa Conservancy is an accredited nonprofit land trust on Kiowa Island. So historically, we preserved land just on Kiowa Island, but with our new strategic plan, we decided to branch outside of Kiowa and also work in the surrounding sea islands. So this kind of shows our geographical scope of work historically on Kiowa Island, and then we decided we need to move outside of Kiowa and include Johns Island, Seabrook, and the surrounding islands, all through a watershed approach. We know that everything ultimately that happens on Johns Island affects Kiowa and vice versa. We also share the same wildlife. And this kind of shows, as we start to move on to Johns Island, our initial focus is along Betsy Carrison Parkway. We've seen over the last year or two this onslaught of development pressures. And this is a beautiful area that we see is really important to protect, not just for wildlife, but for scenic and historical and cultural significance. And then we will start to move out as well into River Road and Bohicket. So Betsy Carrison Nature Trail Phase 2, it's a roughly 15-acre property that is just off of Betsy Carrison Parkway. Around 8 acres of it is made up of the highland off of the parkway, and then the remaining 6 acres is made up of 4 large hummock islands that extend out to Bohicket Creek. The habitat type within is mostly maritime forest with also some salt shrub thicket. And as we go through, this is going to give you a nice aerial view to be able to get a sense of place on Betsy Carrison Parkway. And as I go through here as well, this is kind of our vision as we're a wildlife-centered organization. That comes first. And so this kind of shows how we believe with land preservation that's already taken place and that to come in the future, this will create a wildlife corridor is what we're ultimately working toward. And so to show some interior photos of the hummock islands and the mainland itself, dense maritime forest, a great buffer to a heavily traveled highway. It creates natural infrastructure, holds natural infrastructure, and helps hold that urban growth boundary. Betsy Carrison Parkway in the front, Kiowa is to the right. We're starting to move back toward the hummock islands. This is the bulk of the main property here. We continue to retreat all the way up to Bohicket. That's the final outcome. Would begin right off this existing sidewalk of Betsy Carrison Parkway. It would loop through the property, and then we have gotten preliminary approval so that we could put a boardwalk to the closest hummock island. Signage for our native flora and fauna to educate our visitors. And then we kind of get into the historical significance of this land as well. This land and a lot of land along the Betsy Carrison Parkway and going up Bohicket was used during the Battle of Haulover Cut. This is documented historical significance about the troops of both the Union and the Confederate soldiers moving up through this property, and these properties that we were presented that would get you over the low-lying areas. And so now what I'm showing you is an overall view and how this piece fits into just a quarter-mile away is what was approved in the last funding cycle of Betsy Carson Nature Trail Phase 1. And so what this highlights now is other pending conservation efforts that we have ongoing. We've talked about the easement in the past, is still ongoing, and then we are also working on the piece in between these two nature trails as well preserved within this quarter-mile area. And this further shows the connectivity and how it's easily accessible to all these sites, especially from Phase 3, which I'll get into in a minute. And then as we look at the broad scheme, in yellow, what you'll see is everything that's already been preserved in the area, either by us or Low Country Land Trust or another. Before I get into the next project.
Some questions.
Yeah, so I'd like to open up for some questions.
Or whatever, but other properties that y'all have preserved, do you have any samples of the work that you've done as far as building these nature trails?
Yeah, so on Kiowa Island, we have several areas on our conservation easements that are open to the public that have trails and such. DHEC would allow us to do based on their regulations. It's based on size. We were only allowed to be.
Not at the moment. Just wait till we hear the next one, I guess.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I think we do have someone signed up for public comment.
Well, for this one?
I think for Phase 3.
For just Phase 3?
Okay.
You'll go do Phase 3?
Let's do Phase 3.
Awesome. To allowing and keeping the public, or really emphasizing that public access to these properties. This site in specific will be our parking and public access area for those that want to visit our nature trails. They can easily park here. We'll even have some restoration opportunities I'll state on in the back. But this is where people will come to be able to park and then easily get to our various nature trails along the parkway. Existing on the property right now, you oriented again, we've got Phase 2 here, one property in the middle, and then this is our Phase 3 below. You're only 300 feet from Phase 2 with Phase 3, and only really a quarter mile at the farthest from Phase 2 to Phase 1. Again, showing that connectivity, preserved lands are vital, and then there's an access road on the right side of the property that ultimately leads to the back where some housing structures currently exist. Again, some aerial shots. So current conditions, as stated, Rosebank Farm Stand, impervious parking lot in the front, 3 housing structures. What we want to do is return this property to its undeveloped natural state. Once we have an agreement with Rosebank, they're going to be gone by Christmas. So that's when their site at Kiowa River will be finished. What that will become in the front is a parking area for our visitors, along with some picnic tables and lot. And then where Rosebank currently will be passive green space with picnic tables, signage about the historical significance in the area, native plant. Have a sweetgrass demonstration farm to educate the importance of the cultural significance behind the sweetgrass, and then also a habitat restoration zone. And really, this is the key component to our public access. That was interpretive signage. So now what I'd like to do is
and the weavers that has been trying to keep this skill alive dating back generations. I'm a proud weaver myself. I have a business. Generational helping of our community of sustaining materials. We do have other projects that has been that we're working on. We have a private 1,400 sweetgrass, that Molenberger grass, if you want to call it that. But the culture, the basket makers, we call it sweetgrass, and the texture that we're finding and the knowledge of what makes us a unique culture. As we were able to plant those 1,400 plants, that project, that the Kiowa, of just taking the seeds. Those seeds bloom around the fall months, and what the Kiowa Conservancy has done is
Good morning. My name is Marilyn Hemingway. I am CEO and founding president of the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce and the Gullah Geechee Chamber Foundation. And I mentioned to them, why don't we have an area where we can bring the public and teach them the process and the culture of the sweetgrass? And they took that and very seriously are trying to make that happen. So I'm delighted to be here in support of this project. Why is this important? This passive park will incorporate science, culture, and ecotourism. We are in the process of creating that infrastructure to take potential into reality. This park will be part to take it into reality. The Phase 3 Nature Trail is all.
Question. When I visited the
Vision that there'll be a number of stalls there as well for sales. I mean, will it be an all? I mean, that would be a big attraction. It would seem to.
Eric, about to see if that's even a possibility. If it is, I think it's something that would be great to add into the project.
I see no issue with that. We have multiple greenbelt properties that generate revenue and do have small.
And so is that just kind of utilizing the existing bike path, or how is that, how are you making that obviously
It
connected?
needs to be over here. So it is on the same side as these properties, and it's existing sidewalk that extends all the way down Betsy Carrison Parkway, all the way to the roundabout of Kiowa Island. And so those that would come would be able to park at this by beginning of 2024, really the whole thing finished by the end of 2024. But first public that are going to be in there would be in there, but at least the trail will be created. It's going to be a earthen trail that is not permeable, no materials. It's just signage to keep you on the.
Mr. Chairman.
Let's say do it together. Correct? Do I have a motion?
Quick question before a motion.
Go ahead.
Do we need to specifically allow for a basket stand during our motion / recommendation, or is that something that can happen?
I don't think it specifically needs to be in your motion.
Okay.
And Eric, this might be more for you, but like this is not trying to pick on them or anybody else, but like when we have these that are pledging certain things, it's certain
To another eligible Greenbelt Fund recipient. That's happened in the past very rarely. And I believe the idea also is that, we do want public access, and actually next month when you have your GAB meeting, you're going to get on that, and you'll see that there are some that have made no progress and some have. But as it stands now, unless you all recommend some special condition with a hard.
Okay.
Low Country Land Trust. It's for 41 acres, fee simple, in the rural area. Just outside from Natalie Olson, the Sea Islands Program Director, is for this to be both combination active and passive park.
Tree Land Trust, thank you all for the opportunity to present this project and for your consideration. The Main Road Park project is an incredible opportunity on Johns Island for us to meet our green space goals, both in terms of protecting land from development and offer fee simple properties all along the coast of South Carolina. We've done over 400 projects, over 40 Hollywood, Ravenel. It's a very big service area. Ages 4 to 15, that is very, very few fields for the amount of kids that are currently playing, and so it limits practice. They had to turn away 80 T-ball kids last year because there's not enough fields. So T-ball age children want to be playing, and this is an opportunity for us to give them the space to do that and to offer this to all of the kids that want to play. So in this partnership, the Little League has been looking for space for a long time and approached the Low Country Land Trust, and together we kind of worked through this vision of solving some of these two needs on Johns Island. So protecting land from development is a huge deal on John's Island. Access is going to be a huge benefit, I think, to the island. So we identified this property as a fee system. If you go west, you hit cow fields. So it is kind of the definition of right outside of the urban growth boundary in that transition zone that's very threatened by residential development. So what we're proposing with this project is a bargain sale purchase of this property and then transfer it to the Little League. The concept, which I'll go into more as I go through these slides, is to have about 30% of the property be undisturbed natural forest managed just as a buffer to residential neighborhoods. The view along Main Road would be preserved, and it'd be a nice passive green space potentially in the future. So some of the public benefits of this project, I've mentioned a little bit: protection of low country natural resources and infrastructure. Rural upland areas contribute significantly to air quality, water quality. Flooding is huge, place for flood water, and will be a good buffer to some of the active uses on the property. Outside the urban growth boundary, where we're seeing, you drive around and you really see cleared lots. Like that seems to be the new waterfront views, but here it's an extremely visible stretch of forested wetlands. Population growth on the island, but it's also adjacent to active agricultural areas that are going to. More thing, just about John's Island, population growth has been off the charts. It's doubled in the last stages of this project, and I'm not sure if y'all I didn't get a chance to get the support letters in full, so I wanted to. A lot of we don't have enough space for the kids to be outside. Makes so much more sense than another subdivision to tax our roads. So this is just a little taste of tons of the support letters that we've received throughout kind of the initial stages of this project. I think it also shows, and this is important kind of in the context of the long-term value that it's bringing, it shows the network of support that the Little League has. They have, I mentioned they've been around since the 1950s, but they have an extremely robust network of former players, current players, families, businesses, all sorts of people support the Little League and will do what needs to be done to get these kids out there and continue playing. So as we talk about how this project is going to unfold, I think that's important context. So real quick on the funding and leveraging, this is a request for $1.3 million and $15,500 in transaction costs. The Barrier Islands Little League has estimated $60,000 is what it's going to take to get the 2 T-ball fields up and running, which is the plan for the first 6 months. That's the most immediate need. I mentioned those 80 T-ballers that were turned away. We want to get those kids on some teams and playing. So the priority would be the first 2 T-ball fields. Cost about $50,000 to establish both of those, and about $10,000 to establish unpaved parking to support it. And then the land match is $421,750, and that's the difference between the appraised value and the greenbelt request. Proposed uses and timeline. This is just an initial sketch. I mentioned we're still in the initial stages of this, and so as we get more experts on the property and digging into the details with the Little League, some of that kind of the layout may change as we identify where important trees are and that sort of thing. But this is the overall concept, and like I mentioned, it's 70% passive area, 30% active park uses. Within 6 months, 2 T-ball fields. The long-term vision is to have about 5 fields. That would be T-ball, baseball, and softball, and then have some walking trails throughout the wooded area around it. There will be a conservation easement or deed restriction held by the Low Country Land Trust and enforced in perpetuity. That will limit the subdivisions, residences, impervious surfaces, tree impacts, development in the buffers, uses like mining, industrial. It'll limit commercial uses. Y'all mentioned just in the previous project about limited commercial uses that are consistent with these types of greenbelt projects. Barrier Island Little League's concession stand is a great example of that. Every Little League field has a concession stand, and the Little League has done such a great job at managing those costs. That's actually where a bulk of the money to pay for uniforms and equipment and umpires and stuff for the kids comes from. And so it's important for them to have that use, but the conservation easement or deed restriction will be over the entire property, so we will be limiting those uses and the impervious surfaces and other things like structures and stuff like that. And as y'all can imagine, the restrictions in the wooded area will be a lot more restrictive than they would be in the active area. That's sort of the idea, is to give the Little League the flexibility that they need in this permanent space, but have a strong set of protections that everybody can rely on in perpetuity, that we will have this wooded buffer and undisturbed wetlands and all the natural values that come from that. So I think that's what I had. So let's go to questions. I also, just real quick, I wanted to introduce Mary Bowles. She's sitting in the audience here. She is the president of the Barrier Islands Little League, can answer questions about the Little League. And, hopefully as we move through the process, we'll get some Little League kids up here and they can speak for themselves about how exciting this project is to them. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for the presenter from the board?
Sure. Natalie, looks good. Or
Go ahead, I'll wait.
okay. Now, looks good. I'm just curious about delivery of those fields. So, like, what kind of budget does the Barrier Island Little League have? Can they do it, and then can they pay for it, or are y'all paying for it? And then who's going to build the trails, and when will the trails be ready?
Okay, so to the first question, the Barrier Island Little League finances, and Mary can help me out with some of this, but essentially, I think the biggest point is that the Little League has, in their support, they have a lot of donated goods and services. And so when we're talking about building the 2 Little League fields, they've lined up volunteer donated services and, goods, so dirt, rocks, all that kind of stuff that's going to be needed for the parking. The architect they've got from the international Little League coming down to look at the property for free. Lots of businesses support the Little League and have helped them in the past with some of the things that are necessary for the fields, like lights or maintenance of it. The Barrier Island Little League board has 17 members. A lot of those members are volunteering their time and energy to help maintain the fields. And so the Little League has been around for a long time and has, through this network, I think there's a lot of confidence that this will all be done essentially with donated and volunteered services and people dedicating their time. So that's why I was underscoring a lot of the support. I think that's kind of a key element of it. As far as the concrete commitments, the main focus, and especially with our application that we're most certain about a timeline for, is the 2 T-ball fields. Those are, to get those up and running, it's a lot less of a lift. Some of the fences and the bases and stuff and the mounds are portable, so it's a little bit, that will be very quick. We anticipate being able to get T-ball up and running within six months, and the parking to support that of the project being funded and transferred. The walking trails are more part of the larger vision. What we're trying to do, I think the 2 overarching goals with this project are the active green space and protecting land from development. I think the walking trails, in terms of the priority list, is going to be after the fields, maybe after 3 of the fields instead of 5 of them. And so it's a little bit of a work in progress as we're figuring out how this is going to be phased. So I don't have a firm answer on the walking trails because it's more down on the priority list. And so, the undisturbed woods around the active area are going to be more of a buffer at first. And in a lot of this, a lot of it is taking off chewable bites. What is it? You don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And there's a lot, we need to get straight security, liability insurance, that sort of thing before there's open public access trails. So what we've discussed with the Little League so far is focusing the application and the short-term timeline on getting those 2 T-ball fields together, getting them playing out there, getting some parking, and then working on the longer-term plan after that's done.
Thank you.
Ms. Fox, you have something you'd like to add?
If I could let Mary add to that, I'm sure that I didn't get all the finances right.
My name is Mary Bull, and I'm the president of our Little League organization this year, and next year already, I'm all told. So, very brief history. 7 years ago, we discovered our league was growing rapidly, as Johns Island is. 4 years ago, we put together a committee to search for new land to build new fields because we are outgrowing ours. At that time, we also used Charleston Collegiate School. We lost Charleston Collegiate School last year. So that hurt us a lot. This year, we had so many kids sign up. First day of baseball season, nobody could have a practice because there was nowhere to practice unless you went to the bullpen. That was it. That was the only place they could practice. So needing fields is really important. I am going to say that we have talked to the county. We have talked to the city. The county says the city builds sports fields. The city says we don't have a need for them on Johns Island. We say, come see our Little League program. We don't get very far with that, I'm sorry. Little League is the best program there is in baseball in the world. All you have to do in August is watch the Little League World Series to know that. So in finding land, I reached out to Natalie because somebody told me that you could get Conservancy land and do something to it, and said, please watch for any land for me, please. So I'm totally excited about getting this. We put together a committee of 4 to write up our dream fields, never even seeing the land. And we presented that to her and showed it to her, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is a long list. It's a very long list. It is on a 5-year plan of what to do. We sent an email out to all of our email base, which is about 4,000 people who are in the last 7 years having been involved in Little League, saying, this is our plan, this is a hopeful opportunity, and what can you do to help us? I now have a 3-page list of people who have volunteered services to build new leagues. So I'm really grateful for that. Cost of building these fields, we are told, is going to run about $250,000 if we were to just have to flat out pay for it. We don't have that kind of money, but we've got lots of people that want to help. If there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them specifically.
I have
Christine
a
had
couple.
one. Did you have one initially?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Actually, my question is about the access to the property. So it looks like the cleared area is at the back side of the property. And you showed, you showed that where there's some sort of, I guess, dirt road already leading towards the back of the property. Is the intent to use the same road that's already there? Will it be expanded? Will it be paved?
So, yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. I meant to mention that. The current access to this property right now is on Main Road, right there in the middle. There's just a little cutoff into Main Road, into the driveway of this property. So that will be the primary access. There's going to be a little bit of improvements that need to be made right there where you turn into the driveway to make sure it's safe enough for 2 cars to be next to each other at the same time. But beyond that, the idea is to have the main access out front. There is another access on the back side of the property to the neighborhood. On the right there, into that residential neighborhood, there's actually a road that dead ends kind of into this property. So there is a secondary access point. Right now, we've discussed making that walking, golf carts, that sort of thing for the neighborhoods there. But certainly we're going to keep that in mind as a potential additional access point as the plans are sketched out. But at this point in time, the main access will be off of Main Road.
And is there a plan to pave it or not?
No, there would be only to the extent required by law. If we have to have that cut in paved right off a main road, then that would be required by DOT. But certainly, we're not going to do any paving. That isn't required by law. So all of the roads, all the parking will be gravel, permeable surfaces, and sort of designed around the features that are there. So not cutting down trees just to park a car there.
So then the plan is for you all to give the property to the Little League, the whole property.
Yes.
So ultimately, you all will be responsible not only for the fields, but for maintenance of the access.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I have a question for you, Natalie. How many houses could be built on that land? If you said it already, I apologize, and I apologize to everyone for being late today, but I was stuck on Johns Island.
Thanks, Nora. I did not mention the number of houses. I did mention it's zoned RR, which is rural residential. It's 1 house per 3 acres. There could be about, once you subtract out the wetlands, I think there could be about a dozen houses there. But I always hesitate in saying the number of houses that can go on a piece of property, because every development I think we've ever seen ends up with more houses than you would think that they are, you know. And so with conservation subdivision zoning, with a PUD, which wouldn't necessarily be out of the norm, there are lots of different options for that to be developed in the exact same way that the 3rd acre lots directly behind it and the half-acre, 3rd acre lots at Sea Island Preserve right down Main Road. So within a couple of 100 feet, you have 3rd acre residential lots. That's not what it is currently zoned now, but if you're looking at what's been done on similar properties outside the urban growth boundary, those are great examples of it. So it's 1 house per 3 acres currently zoned.
I'd just like to follow up on Christine's line of questioning. Is the Little League Association, the Barrier Island Little League Association, are you on board with trails through the wooded area and developing those eventually?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
And the public access
Yes.
pieces. And this is only for T-ball. This is not for
No.
the larger ages.
No,
It's for everybody.
It's for everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so the plan would be 2 T-ball fields and then 3 or so softball and baseball fields for
Okay.
the older leagues.
Given that this is intended to be for public access, kind of in the big picture sense, how do you manage the fields relative to like other people showing up wanting to use them on off hours, or like, is this going to be viewed like the Barrier Islands fields, or are they fields that are available to the public on an off Saturday in the fall when there's no baseball or whatever?
They will probably be more viewed as Barrier Island fields, but as Barrier Island fields are now on Johns Island, we do allow the local travel ball teams to use the field. We allow families that are having birthday parties to use the field. I've seen family reunions come have a Sunday afternoon picnic and play wiffle ball. It will be able to be used by the public. Yes, I do believe so.
And like, as in not locked gates, or how do you propose handling that?
Right now, that is something that we have talked about, because security is really important for us.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, on Maybank, we have had 3 break-ins in the last 5 years, with equipment being stolen, just plain vandalism going on. So we do want to keep things secure for people. We actually even consider the opportunity of having to hire somebody that actually is going to be there in charge of the fields, because we are growing so large and the number of kids that would be now involved.
Yeah, so I think in terms of, I mean, what we've explained in the application is that we're, that initially it's going to be gates to just be accessed by the Little League during those times, that they're playing or having games, but at those times it's open to the public, obviously. I mean, the Little League. So when they're playing or when they're practicing, the gate will be open and there will be people there. But the initial plan, before it's built out with more facilities and security and whatnot, will be to have it gated. That's what we've discussed.
And they could go through the Bear Island Little League to, if somebody wants to use the field, just like you're doing now.
Oh, that's just what we do now.
In some kind of sign-up format, or they just request it, or
They request it, it goes to the calendar to see if it's available. Unfortunately, we say Little League is first and foremost at our fields, so if we have something going on, we have our events first. Our games come first.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone else? Anyone else?
Can I
Yep.
say something before
Sure,
we
Nora.
vote?
You're gonna talk to them?
Well, I just.
Or is
yeah,
it
can
for
I
the
do that?
board?
It's for them.
Okay.
Kind of, okay. I'd like to applaud the Little League folks for doing such a good job for so long with nothing. I've lived on the island for 24 years, and I can tell you that I have complete confidence in them in you to do whatever it takes.
Thank you.
No more questions. Thank you very much. For the board, does anyone want to make a recommendation or a motion?
I think we do have a.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a
commenter on that
one more
Yes,
comment?
sir.
Hi, I'm Rich Thomas. I live at 4360 Betsy Carrison Parkway, which is right in between the two properties that Kiowa Conservancy are acquiring. I've been in talks with Collie and Lee about my property going into that block, which would give about 30 acres or so in a solid block right there. There's also church property next door, which is undeveloped, that extends out onto the island, out in the marsh. My property goes out onto the island too. It's an amazing area, and I'm so glad it's being put into conservation, and I'd like to do the same. Just a few comments about that. The wildlife there is amazing. There's an osprey. It's taken up residence somewhere. I hear it flying around every day. The pileated woodpeckers are out there screaming and making noise all day long. Lots of other bird animal life. I saw a black panther walk across my property about 13 years ago and killed a deer on one of the properties that they're buying. So it's pretty amazing. It's an amazing space, being so close to this development that's pressuring the whole end of Betsy Carrison. Somebody asked a question about access between those two properties. I have no issue with putting a path across the front of mine that would tie those two together so that nobody would have to walk out on the road. Wouldn't be an issue for me, and I think it would be a great amenity. The idea of putting up a sweetgrass basket area there is really amazing too. There are ladies who weave baskets on the island, and one of them sells her baskets and weaves her baskets there at the farm stand right now. There are others who have set up in the road, Betsy Carrison, and sold baskets for years. So there's a community of those people right there. So that would be a great amenity as well for the public in general, the tourists coming down, and people who just want a little respite from the traffic and development there. So I'm glad you all are in favor of that, and I myself am very much in favor of it as well, and I hope that I can work with them to get my property in similar conservation. as far as the Little League property, I'm on the board of St. John's Water Company, and I'm not speaking for the board at all, but the water company has been providing the Little League with part of our property for their ball fields for, I don't know, years. How many years? 28 years. So it's great to see them having an opportunity to move to another property. And as Natalie and Mary mentioned, there's a huge need on Johns Island for not only the ball fields, but just more protected space. And again, that whole area of Johns Island, the development pressures are pretty amazing. So thank you all for considering these projects, and I hope they can move forward because it'll be a tremendous amenity to all the residents around here. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for making the trip in. And
Any
sir?
questions?
No, anybody have any questions?
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Thanks for making the trip in and offering your comments in support of these projects. Any more comments?
That's all that signed up.
Okay. Does anyone like to make a motion?
I'll move for approval.
Motion and a second. Do we have any discussion amongst the board?
I would just like to somehow weave into this that those fields need to have some degree of availability. I don't know quite what the best procedure for that is. I don't really know how to manage athletic fields. I don't have any concept of that. But it just doesn't seem like it'd be quite right if they were just locked up every time the Little League is not using them. So
So I kind of have a different opinion.
you do? Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, and you know more than I do about this. So
I mean, fields are expensive to
Right.
maintain, and if full-on access is allowed all the time, and you've got people out there that don't have permission, or what we see with Mount Pleasant is some people that decide to use them as a dog park when the fields aren't open, and a dog can do a lot of damage to the fields. I know it's probably very similar to what this Little League does. The town has to do it too. I mean, yeah, first priority are the town's baseball teams, whoever we have. And then as a secondary, the travel teams will come out and have permission to use them. But it is, we have a calendar. And so I can appreciate that they want some sort of calendar, that they're going to have some sort of calendar, probably very similar to what the municipalities do for their fields. And I can very much appreciate the need to protect the field, not only for security, but for maintenance purposes. So that's just.
well, that sounds good. So there's a sign-up procedure,
Correct.
and that is reasonable.
I think so. Works for us.
Okay.
It's
Okay, well, then
as a
I guess I would just
municipality.
amend it that way, just as long as there's a published sign-up procedure so that someone else could potentially use them going through the proper channels. Is that fair, do you think?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so can I amend it slightly?
You can. Did you make that motion
Well, I motion for approval
with the condition?
with the condition that there's just some kind of sign-up procedure, which sounds like there already is, for use of the fields in off times or non-baseball times.
And then I
Anybody
think,
second that?
Second.
Yep.
Anybody second Beezer's addition to the motion?
I think Nora just did.
What's that?
I think Nora just did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Nora is second that. Okay, so for the vote, it would be to approve the project with a desire made known by the board to have some sort of policy that allows, and sign up, that allows other people to use
A
the,
published sign-up plan.
okay? Does everybody understand that? Okay.
I think we can massage that a little bit for the grant agreement as far as the language goes. And between now and the GAB meeting as well, we can talk with the Little League and get that language down.
Okay, sounds good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
All right, that concludes our 3 rural projects. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break for our subcommittee members. There are some coffee and a few snacks in the ante room there. We'll reconvene 10:25.
Coffee break.
Yeah.
You never had, you don't really get those very often.
It's because Charlie's the chair, man.
You gotta make sure the coffee's flowing.
Well, that took forever.
Good.
What took y'all? trash can up here.
So for the minutes, do we need to make sure we show that Mr. Samuelson is now the return to the chair?
And I'm leaving.
And now he's leaving.
Wait,
I was kind of hoping we get started with that comment.
Who's the alternative chair?
Vice.
I know.
And then now that he's back, because he couldn't work on that last project,
Right, right.
because he did it, so now he's going to.
I wasn't going to bring one in.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we'll move into our urban projects. First one up is North Bridge Properties, a request from City of North Charleston. Fee simple in the urban area, obviously drawing from the City of North Charleston's allocation. It would be to protect 172 acres, and I believe that's 5 different parcels right around the intersection of Cosgrove Avenue and 526, just down the street here. And the request is for $734,500 and no match being offered. We've got Shannon Prady from City of North Charleston Mayor's Office to provide her presentation. All right, Shannon, you're welcome. You got your laser pointer there.
Thank you. Good. Hi, I'm Shannon Prady. I'm with Mayor Summey's office. This is the North Bridge Properties. We have been working on this for many years. I think many of you all remember Ray Anderson. He was working on this, and actually I had to go in his files and find some old notes that he had taken about this property. This is for 172.9 acres, includes 16 acres of highland and 156 acres of wet.
One more time with that breakdown.
16 acres of high, 156.8 of wet. This property is actually owned by an LLC, which is part of the Darby Way Long family through the Beach Company. Actually, in Ray's handwriting yesterday, I found some history on the property. The property was actually originally owned by the Lutheran Church, and in 1930s, J.C. Long actually purchased it from them. And the properties actually, access is easier if you come back through the marsh. We have actually gone through the cemetery and entered the properties or down along 26. We're thinking in terms of a passive park, a walkway. There is, as y'all may know, some discussion about a pedestrian walkway over the Ashley River, and this would actually be a great place to kind of make it enter. There are 2 billboards on the property, and I'm going to use his little clicker. One, come on. Ah, there it is. Is it this?
Yeah, just use that and scroll over.
One of the billboards is here. Did it show? Well, it's actually at the wrong place, but right there. And then another one of the billboards is down in this area. Hold on. It's not exactly the quickest thing I figured out. Well,
Near the clover leaves.
huh?
Near the clover leaf.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm trying to click and it's not.
It's okay. Just a cursor, if you could use that, that'd be good.
It's right there in that high piece.
Yeah, it's down here on this corner, down below the clover leaf, right to the right of it.
Yep.
Those 2 billboards, the city has done a letter to Greenbelt that we agreed to use those funds for the maintenance, upkeep, and the development of these parcels.
Hold on, can you restate that?
We're under contract with those billboards.
Yep.
And the city has agreed, I believe it's 38,000 a year that we'll use those funds until the lease runs out to actually do the maintenance upkeep of these properties.
9 years left.
I think the current lease was just renewed about a year ago, so
Yeah.
there's about 9 years left, and the value in the appraisal of the revenue that'll be, the value of the appraisal, half of that is from the revenue generated by the billboards.
Yeah.
So if the billboards are not there, the appraised value will be half of what it is now.
So roughly $300,000 of it?
Thank you.
This shows the zoning of the properties. The yellow over here is R2. That is actually the R2 in front of it is actually the cemetery. The easiest way to actually view the property is actually to go into the cemetery and then go to the back corner. It's R2 in the back, and then over here you've got some B2. There is a little bitty red parcel up there on the right-hand corner. See where the yellow is in that little bitty red parcel? That is actually a going to be a, gosh, my mind just totally blank, 20 units of affordable housing that's going to be homeowner occupied. They're actually groundbreaking on in October. So the thought is that's going to be a lot of new residents in that area. And also that yellow area is undergoing kind of a renaissance with a lot of those homes being redone and hopefully more homeowners moving into them. This area is so convenient. It's kind of why people are moving into it.
And so it's just the red that are the properties that we're talking about, right? Not the up in the orange part.
Actually, the big yellow to the left and the two reds, the two big reds.
Okay.
And then there's, if you look up there, kind of going towards 26, see how there's one parcel that's red and yellow mixed? That parcel as well, and then those red parcels over there. You can actually, if you drive down right along 26, you can actually enter the parcel up there where the red and yellow parcels are. There's a gate and a fence right there because of the billboard. So all that would come down and there would be some access there. The easiest way to access it, of course, is through the river. These are some pictures. These were actually taken from the appraisal. It shows you under 26 where the billboard is, and then some of the back pictures. We actually, when we did a site visit, we actually went down into the graveyard and looked at it out that way. Yes, sir. The city has about $4.5 million left in our allocation, so this money would come from that. Yep.
That greenish color piece, like up in the top corner.
Left side, top left.
Yellow?
No.
That's the bend, that's the event.
No, this right here is actually the cemetery.
That cemetery to the
Yes.
left of that is
Yeah.
the bend.
It's the
Okay,
bend.
that's what I was trying to.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was going to ask, yes.
But the parcels, the O2 that's just south of the cemetery
Now it's working.
is one of the
Yeah,
parcels.
this is one of the parcels.
It is.
Yes.
There's four to the west of Sam Rittenberg or Cosgrove. The two small ones up there, up
Yeah,
top where the
these
access
little
would be,
small
the
ones,
two below
this
that.
big red one, this yellow one, and this one. And this is actually the cemetery. So when you come in, if you go straight back, you can actually get out of your car about right here. There's actually a gate here, too, and there's a gate on this other road up here.
Where's the high, you said 17 acres of high ground?
Yes, sir. 16 acres of high. I believe there are some little bitty actual islands back in this area.
See that?
And there is probably this acreage right up in here is high as well. That's what we bought.
Go back to my slide, you can see it there. So that gives you the parcels and the locations.
Okay. Was
We're
there-
in the question mode now?
Yes. Go ahead.
I think this thing should have scored higher, Shannon. I don't know what the problem is here. Is the billboard thing considered a match?
Could be. I mean,
Or
we're going to go ahead and use it.
Could
I
that
mean,
revenue come back to the Greenbelt Fund?
no, it's
Or
not. It's
your-
going actually back to this park.
to the park, and then have y'all? But that's undefined.
Right. We actually have a letter that he has that actually says it's going to be used to pay for the development, maintenance, et cetera, on these parcels.
Next question.
Yes, sir.
Is that lease, is there an extension on that lease, or 9 years is dead?
We'll be the owner at that point. I think that's what we're going to try to do, is get rid of it after the 9. But if it does, then we would, of course, continue to do this.
Accessibility's not good.
What?
Accessibility's not good.
We better say it loud.
The access, I don't see it being, I mean, going to a cemetery, I'm looking at, trying to figure out, so your best access point is through the cemetery?
No, you can actually come down. Oh, crud. Hold on. Actual
I see
easiest.
Harvey- I see Harvey Street,
Yeah, the easiest access, let me see if I can get his little clicker to work again.
as it goes.
It's
underneath.
actually, when you come, you take a right off Azalea, you turn this way and come straight down. It actually brings you right here into these
Real
parcels.
front, okay. I see it.
Yep, and there's a gate here right now and a lock,
Got it.
but that would be removed. And then, once it was cleared, when we were there, it was 3 weeks ago, and I don't think any of us had snake boots on, and the grass was probably at least knee-high. So you would easily be able to access it from right there.
And the majority of the highland is on that island, which is off of Cosgrove.
Well, I think the Highland is going to be in this area, and then back in here, some of the other.
Right, but how do you access the piece off of Cosgrove?
You could use it, I mean, we haven't gotten that far in planning. We're just trying to get it.
Secured.
Okay.
Is it vulnerable to transaction?
They have, years ago, the company that owned it was actually looking at putting a marina in the spot. DOT, from what we gather, said they wouldn't support it. They have made some comments when Ray was alive that it was vulnerable because of some of the zoning. So, and we had always talked about, if in actuality the pedestrian bridge from West Ashley to over here becomes a reality, you're going to need some kind of a drop-off point. And wouldn't this be great if it dropped off and then you had a pedestrian walkway in through here anyway?
So currently, there's no way for if the bridge were to land, say, on that island, there's no current way to walk off of that island onto another pedestrian way, right? So that would have to be part of that as well.
That would be part of the
Okay.
pedestrian bridge, yeah. We have this property, looking back at some of Ray's old notes, has probably been under discussion for the past 5 years at least, and the issue has always been the billboards because of the value.
And the issue being, just, I don't
The
follow that.
billboards basically double the value of the property, and it took a while with the company agreeing to sell. We had to make sure to include that billboard value.
Okay. And that, you said that's going to go in. I agree with Beezer, what he was alluding to. I would have included that as match. That would have helped improve the score.
I mean, we could do so, that's fine. Like I said, we have sent the letter, and Greenbelt is in receipt of that.
And then the other is was there any attempt to make any kind of public support or get any kind of public support, maybe from the Bend folks or the cemetery or anything like that?
No. Bend is currently for sale.
Meaning you don't need their approval, or it doesn't. It kind of doesn't matter. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's going to sell to somebody. Or,
Yeah. And I mean, these neighborhoods are all very much in transition. This would be a great access for them. It's just sort of one of these things we've been working on for so long, just trying to get it under ownership. The cemetery is actually owned by the same family we're purchasing this from.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, as far as the match goes, I think I would feel comfortable in counting this as match if, one, those proceeds went back into their Greenbelt account, to be reused for future Greenbelt projects. Or if that, I'm a little concerned about the maintenance part of it. I could see, we often count the cost of future development of projects as part of match, but typically not maintenance. That's just something that is, that we haven't, there's no precedent for that. So if it were pared down to development of that site, and maybe there's some more details on what that development looks like and when that would happen, I would feel comfortable as counting it as match. Or if those proceeds went back into North Charleston's Greenbelt, the allocation to be reused on other projects.
So I just did the quick math. So it's like 288,000 over the next 9 years in total. So realistically, if it were to go towards development, you'd have to wait because, a couple grand a month for, is not going to do anything to build, to be part of development.
It will be done sooner than that, I would imagine, but right now we've got Park Circle finishing up. We also just closed on Ingleside a couple weeks ago, and Noisette. That whole walk path is actually beginning to really take shape. I don't know if you've been over the pedestrian bridge lately, but you're also starting to see some of the walkways along the water as well.
Which look awesome, by the way. All right, I have a motion, if we're ready for that.
Real quick, one quick question. Could it be a reimbursement for development? Oh, is that where you're going? Take it away, Beezer.
Okay, I would motion for approval pending either of these two options. Either the Greenbelt money is reimbursed in entirety for the billboards through 9 years, or there's a very defined public access park with decent access that it's clearly mapped out and with a time frame that could be considered either a match and or that the billboard money is going to. I would guess that active accessible park would be more than the billboard, but whatever. It's such an amazing piece of property. I don't see why you wouldn't get on with that, I guess is the point. So that would be my motion. I would motion for approval that either the Greenbelt money or the Greenbelt is reimbursed for the billboard, or there is a defined park that the billboard money plus goes to, which would increase the score were we to rescore it. But that would be my motion.
I think we would be more willing to do the public access. I mean, we have right now 4.5 million still. This is only going to take 700,000 out of it. I think we'd be more willing to work on the public access specifically off this area. Go ahead and getting the fencing down, getting some parking, because once you're in that area, you can really start to move. I think that's where we're probably going to start initially with public access.
Well, I've put out that motion if y'all want to talk about it or amend it or whatever.
We need a second one, right?
That's right, for discussion.
I'll second it for discussion.
For discussion.
Yes. I don't think this is ready for a vote. There are too many things that we've talked about. Like, why don't we do this again and have them come back with it?
I agree, defer it.
Yeah, I think we should defer it.
Okay, we'll motion for that.
Just to let you know that if we don't get this property we probably won't be able to close by the end of December.
Nora, just a quick question. What do you think, just for discussion's sake, what in your opinion needs to be more defined?
I just think that it seems unfinished. It seems that some of this stuff could have been taken care of beforehand.
Scoring.
They have no match.
We typically don't provide match in our project.
Scoring concerns me.
What's the score? We don't see the scores.
Excuse me?
We don't see the scores.
Well, we do, and it's not good.
It's 40 or 42, and like that would be unprecedented to pass that. Just so you know, like it would not be consistent with our history to pass one that low.
Well, again, we don't see the score, so we don't know where it could come up.
Well, it comes off of your application.
Right, but again, we don't see the score sheet. We don't get a
Right.
copy of it.
What did you score it as the applicant?
I don't score it.
Only subcommittee schools.
But
Only
Well, there's
subcommittee
point
schools.
values for every question, and you select an answer for it. But it's right, it doesn't calculate it at the end. We calculate it manually once it's submitted.
Right, but don't the applicants have
yeah,
an
the
opportunity to
applicant's
see
score.
at
You don't
least
know what
score their
how
own?
you scored it?
No.
So just to be clear, when they fill out their application, the second half of the application is all the criteria that relates to the score. So I think the first question is worth 8 points, and it asks, which of these Greenbelt definitions does this project meet? And there's different points for each answer. So you go through 16 questions, and those point totals total up to 100. One note would be if half of the value of the appraisal were counted as match, that would be 100% match, raising the score by 15 points. So if there's a way to work that out, that would raise the score.
I think we also talked when we were out there about when we got access back behind the graveyard and looked at some of the grand trees as well.
I think that goes to Nora's point that, there is a way
We did.
to do a little bit more thorough job on this and to raise and to be aware of what the score is. I think I'd probably agree with Nora.
The only thing we would ask is we try to do this quickly because, like I said, we're under contract. We'd have closed it by the end of the year.
I'm happy to help continue to make it move, but I need something that I can bite into so I can feel good about voting for it.
I mean, we can do like we were talking about the match. That's no problem.
Yeah, maybe work with the staff to go through the application and see how you can increase the points.
I think it needs to be deferred.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think you have to make a motion to that effect.
There's a motion on the table now with
There
the
is a
second.
motion, there's a second. So
Either that gets voted on or
we can-
you can rescind that.
Can you, I hate to keep asking questions here, but
Can we do something? Could we maybe, like, at the next committee meeting, at the next time it's present the newer scores in, what is it, October?
Well, that's where Nora's going with the deferment.
can you explain how your motion would address some of the things that you've heard?
Well, so my motion was either the green belt is reimbursed for the billboard money, which effectively replenishes the North Charleston Greenbelt funds by $300,000 over 9 years, and then it can sit there and be dormant. I could sort of see that being dormant, and the match comes up.
Well, the city can put money into the project.
Yeah, they can kind of.
City can fund it.
Yeah, city can fund it, or it could even sit there until they come up with a plan. And I think it fulfills. It would come up 15 points, which would be what is that, 57?
57.
Or similarly, they develop the park now using the billboard money, probably plus some North Charleston funds, and make it a park. Go ahead and make it a park. And that too would bring up the score even higher.
I think this park will be probably developed in the next 3 to 5 years. Looking at the other parks they'll be finishing up.
Yeah. Well, then, I mean, that changes everything if you can just define that.
We're currently getting ready to have a new administration.
Yeah.
And so we've got some,
A lot of changes.
a lot of changes going on, and we've got a lot of huge projects that are finishing up.
Yeah.
Well, could
I was
we-
hoping that would be a solution, but deferral works too. If y'all want to vote that motion down and go to deferral, and we can still get it done this year, Shannon.
Okay.
Mr.
I
Chair.
would think.
I mean, if the subcommittee defers, it doesn't go to the committee
That's correct.
in
That-
October.
That's correct. So if you defer, then what you would want to do is defer it until a specific date, give them a specific time frame for the deferral, let them know what you want, additional information you want them to bring back, which we've discussed. That would be more detail on plans for the park, what development looks like of the park, maybe work on that application again, take a closer look and grab some of those low-hanging fruit points and resubmit that. And then we could defer and do a subcommittee meeting immediately before the full GAB meeting next month on October 11th, so that the subcommittee would have an opportunity to review this again with more information and an updated application, and then make that recommendation to the GAB. But you all, for it to get to the GAB, you have to make some recommendation.
And that gives them time to go back to their planning department to try to come up with a better plan.
The plan, we're not going to be able to come up with a plan, and the planning department doesn't actually develop parks. We go through a third party. So that's not going to be something feasible. We're not going to be able to get a park plan in the next 25 days.
Which I think, you know, a lot
Right.
of times we buy, the properties are purchased without a plan in
Plan,
place.
right.
That, you know, that-
I mean, Ingleside was purchased with no plans from us.
If we subtracted
And that was
$288,000
$4 million.
from what they're
Well, a commitment to open the park by a certain date would certainly raise the score as well, and I think address some of your concerns
I mean, if we committed
as
to
far as
open it
access.
by 28,
Let's go.
What do you want to do? You want to vote? And
I kind of like following along with what Eric has suggested, is let's give them the opportunity to come back. We use that date of the next committee, the full committee, so that gives you almost a month to not necessarily come up with a plan, but at least to address the match and some other elements that might help improve the score.
We'll meet at 9:30.
so I think we need to vote on the other thing now.
Go ahead.
Either that, or you can
We
you
got
could
a motion
also
on the floor, we
withdraw,
got a second on the
I'll
floor.
withdraw. I'll withdraw.
and then whoever seconded it would need to withdraw as well. Withdraw their second.
Yes. Withdraw. Now we're going to the next motion is to Nora to
So I think that would be deferral,
Defer to-
deferral until October
At 9:30.
11th, and bring back more information on what we've discussed so far.
and we'll meet at 9:30 previously before our 10 o'clock board meeting. Or 10:45, whatever, 9:45, whatever time we think we need.
We can work that out.
9:30.
Okay.
I motion that we defer until the 11th and give you time to come back to us with some answers to the questions we've asked.
I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. We'll see you in October.
All right, next project we have for your consideration is Beefield Community Park, submitted by Low Country Land Trust. It's a fee simple urban project on James Island. 4 acres would be protected and turned into a public park, and the request is for $712,500. Again, this is the urban unincorporated project, would also be eligible for the small landowner program, and they're offering a 35% match. I've got Sam Sewell here today. He's the Community Lands Director for Low Country Land Trust. Sam?
Hello, everyone. Like Eric said, my name is Sam Sewell. I'm the Community Lands Director at the Low Country Land Trust. I'm excited to present this project to y'all, the Beefield Community Park. It's located, it's approximately 4 acres located in the Beefield community on James Island. It's made up about 8 parcels. As you can see by the parcel lines, it's already, a lot of the entitlements have already been done by the landowner to begin the phasing it for development. So this project will kind of be addressing the impending development of the property. The kind of the backup, our community lands program at the Land Trust, we established it when we merged with the East Cooper Land Trust, and so it's building on the work that East Cooper Land Trust had been doing with establishing public access properties, as well as working within our settlement communities in Charleston County. So this project follows a similar pattern to Natalie's project, as well as work that ACLT was doing. It follows like a buy, protect, transfer model, in which we purchase the property, protect it with the conservation easement, and then transfer it to the community organization to manage the property. So the project's goals, there's kind of 4 main goals of the project. First one is to prevent the incompatible development of the property. Like I said, the landowners, priority was to, they purchased the property to develop it, and so if this does not go through, they will be pursuing development of the property. Their current plan right now is an 800 subdivision of the property. The next goal will be to provide public green space, both to the Beefield community, but also to the larger community at whole. As then the next one would be to preserve the Beefield community. It's one of our recently designated communities. It was designated in 2021, I believe, as a historic district in Charleston County. So it does have S3 zoning on the property. And that was led by the community organization via their president, George Richardson, but also in collaboration with the Historic Charleston Foundation. And then the 4th goal of the project would be just to protect open space and natural habitat on James Island and within Charleston County. Quick note, this is the road that the property is located on, Arsburn Road. It's currently a dirt road at the moment. They are working with county council and in the county to have this paved, but this is a pretty awesome kind of oak alley, and scenically it's a pretty beautiful property. And the property, these oaks on the left side of the picture, that's the road frontage of the property. So the financial details, we had the property appraised at $952,000. We negotiated with the landowner, and we locked in a purchase sale agreement of $800,000. So we are going to the Conservation Bank for $100,000 a match, and then asking $712,500 from the green balance. That $12,500 will cover our closing costs. And so that comes down to a match of, I rounded up on the match, so it's 35. I think it's 35.6. So I went to 36. So phase 1, I kind of mentioned it's our kind of buy, protect, transfer model. So phase 1 is to purchase the property. Our purchase agreement expires at the end of this year. So the landowner's been very explicit. They're willing and open, but they were very clear that, if this opportunity passes, then they will be pursuing development of the property. And so the impending development is there. The second one will be to place a conservation easement on the property. So BIDNA is the acronym for it's Battery Island Drive Neighborhood Association. So Beefield community is located on Battery Island Drive, hence the name. And so they are a 501c3 nonprofit. And so civic association, volunteers, it's not a homeowners association as some might have thought in the past. And then phase 3 would be the transfer to the property. You know, in terms of the transferring and the ownership of the property by bid note, you know, one thing that I've kind of proactively have been addressing is establishing with the solid amount of resources in which they can maintain the property. And so they've been around since 2010, so they're well established in their organization and their leadership. But you know, it was a priority of mine within our community lands program to kind of go the step further as we enter this perpetual partnership with them to make sure that they have the resources they have to achieve the vision of the property and have it be a really nice place for the community and the public to come as a whole. So I've engaged with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to incorporate this property into a larger grant that Low Country Land Trust has been a part of with the Fish and Wildlife Service for over 20 years. That's be our Coastal Partners Grant. So those discussions are still ongoing. Our grant just ended, our latest cycle, so we'll be renewing that. And I don't have any official numbers that's why I didn't include them, because I didn't want to be a little presumptuous. But it's, you know, we're very confident that, you know, this will be included. And they actually have a separate pot of money that's just become available to serve underserved communities, like the Beefield community. Second resource that I've been exploring, I've begun conversations with the South Carolina Association for Community and Economic Development, SCASD. So they have a grant cycle specifically geared towards community farms and community gardens. So they have a February grant cycle I've already spoken to them about that I'll be submitting an application in to help establish a community garden on the property as well. Further discussions I've engaged with Marilyn Hemingway, who you heard from earlier, with Kiowa. She's with the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce as well as the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor. So our conversations have kind of been progressing with her in her involvement with this project as well. So just trying to layer, you know, make sure that we have, you know, the Beefield community has the amount of financial as well as logistical support to make sure everything goes smoothly once they own the property. So kind of addressing the 4 main project goals, the incompatible development. So like I said, the protection of this property would, you know, prevent the proposed 8-home subdivision. You can see this is TNC's climate resilience model, and the entirety of the property is located within migration space for tidal habitat. So flooding is a really huge issue in the Beefield community in this area. So any sort of intensive development like is being proposed would have a really severe impact on both the existing homes, but also future, you know, the future of the area and the land. And so there's actually a tidal creek that abuts. It comes up like right around here. It's been channelized, and so, you know, putting in the subdivision would come in, and this would be a cul-de-sac, and the homes would be right around there. So that would just, you know, it would cause a lot of issues flooding wise. The protection of this property also meets Charleston County's comprehensive development goals of protecting cultural communities within the urban and suburban areas. So it kind of meets that goal of protecting lands within, you know, intensive development for open space. And, you know, this area is getting more and more pressure as each day, you know, with Folly Beach's recent, you know, decision with the short-term rental. We've already seen this property right here was annexed out of the community into the city and has been approved for a 16-home subdivision and a bed and breakfast. And so thankfully that's on the outskirts of the community, but we kind of are starting to see the pressure come into the community, and this property is located right in the heart of the community. So this development would really be a kind of sucker punch and really kind of put a hole right in the community. In terms of the public green space, there's a really severe lack of public green space in this corner of James Island. As you can see, this is the Stars location of the property. Our GIS department went and mapped out every public accessible green space within 5 miles of the property. The nearest one is about roughly 2.5 to 3 miles away, not really, walkable distance. And so, that green space is very important to establish both in the near term, but also for the long-term development of James Island. This project is reactive and proactive in the same way. It's reactive to the development threat of the property, but also it's proactively establishing a green space within an area that we definitely anticipate is going to be continuing more and more development pressure on the area. So in terms of the Beefield community and preserving the land in the community, so like I mentioned, the Beefield community is a Gullah Geechee settlement community. It's been recently designated by Charleston County as a historic district. You can kind of see right here, this is the WMB tract. This is the land that the Beefield community was established on. This is Old Folly Road. I found this map in the Avery Center. So the Old Folly Road used to go right to the Beefield community and connect into Soul Agree. When they developed the Folly Road, the new Folly Road, they actually cut this connection off to Soul Agree. And so Beefield and Soul Agree were very much a connected community. That also severed Beefield's accessibility to the Sea Island Farmers Lodge and other, different, kind of community resources. And so at the moment, they do not have a place to gather as a community. They don't have a community, an area for them to convene at. And so that lack of social infrastructure is a real hindrance on the communities, especially our Gullah communities that rely on those central locations for their kind of culture. And so it also would help, this project would help preserve the history of the lands. This property is located in the center of two Civil War battlegrounds, the Battle of Secessionville and the Battle of Grimball's Landing. The Grimball's Landing was interesting enough. I don't know if y'all have seen the movie Glory, but the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Regiment, I believe, that this was their second engagement prior to the battle that is depicted in the movie Glory. I believe it's the Battle of Fort Wagner. And so it's kind of them, that regiment being one of the first African-American regiments and having them fall, this would be one of their first engagements on this property is kind of, I thought is pretty special for this community. And finally, the open space and natural habitat. Majority of the property consists of a coastal maritime forest. It's pretty much completely dominated by longleaf pine. By live oak. And then the protection of the property also allow community uses, such as community gatherings, community gardens, and passive uses. We will be allowing the potential for the construction of a small community center. The maximum impervious surface, as you'll see on the next slide, is 3,000 square feet total for the property, so it'll be a very small building. But like I said, they don't have a place to gather at the moment, so we would like to offer them that opportunity if they would like to pursue it, to construct that. The restrictions of the property, so the impervious surface will be limited to 3,000 square feet. That's about 0.17 of 1% of the property. There'll be no residential or commercial structures. Like I said, the one building for use as a community center is permitted. Common park amenities such as picnic tables, benches, any other kind of things you can think of. Infrastructure related to a community garden would be permitted, and then also that would be limited into the impervious surface restrictions. And then this last one is important. We will be placing an affirmative requirement that the general public have access to the park under the same rules and regulations as the Beefield community members. So Beefield community, they would be the managers of the park, and we would have established rules and regulations, but all, it would be written into the easement that is, required that everyone has full access to the property. And that's about it. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah. Question. So, just to be curious and maybe highlight the incompatible development, it looks like it's 8 lots on 4 acres, so probably a little less than a half-acre lot or something, right? That with the access. What's the an example of an average lot size in the Beefield community?
So I don't have that specific information. It is zoned S3, so the 8-home subdivision would fall within the zoning, definitely. The development of it, there's no cul-de-sacs located in the Beefield community. There's no, developments of that type, located within the community. There has been precedents already set of annexing out of the S3 zoning into the city of Charleston by that subdivision down the road. So there is certainly that concern there as well. There has been, the Historic Preservation Commission has been able to stall the development of the property thus far. But I think it's only a matter of time. And the development, I don't know how much flooding and sea level rise is put into zoning, and when it comes to that, it's a low ground area, and the homes just working with the landowner and seeing the plans that they've kind of have envisioning, it's a lot of concrete, and it's a paved road. It's 8 homes. It's going to have a significant impact on the area. This property's never been developed, and there's never been we had phase 1 done on the property, and it's always through its history always been ag land and/or forest land. So the characteristics of the property very much meet the open space qualities. So. Yeah. And the incompatible development also kind of goes into the nature of the Beefield community as well. So not only is the land, not, in my opinion, not suited for that kind of development, it also, the community, it would be very out of sync with the community. So.
Are all the utilities available, water, sewer available at the site?
They have not, I don't see, they have not gotten, they've gotten the commitments, but not, I don't believe
No
they have.
letters to serve?
They haven't lined it up, no. Yeah.
Because that brings the value of the property to what they're thinking, unless they have a letter to serve, like water, sewer. They don't have sewer, what these sites perk to put, so then the value of the property might not be the same, so I didn't see the appraisal to.
Okay, is there an appraisal?
Yeah, Compass South, Travis Avant, Compass South performed the appraisal. It's attached in the application. That's that 952.
That's satisfactory.
Yeah, I mean, that's satisfactory, I just haven't seen it yet. Just, that's the question I'd have.
Yep.
Is water and sewer available to the site? Water probably is, sewer's my question mark.
Mm-hmm.
That would drive the value, and also would 8 sites perk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I believe
saying
that's
it's low, so that would
included in
be-
the appraisal that's included in the application.
Okay.
So y'all should have that.
Okay.
It seems sort of like an island unto itself. Like it doesn't look like it has great connectivity to just things that we normally look at in terms of ease of access and pedestrian access, even car access on a dirt road. So like, clearly y'all are convinced that this thing will be utilized by this community, but can you just speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. That's kind of goes into the proactive aspect that I was talking about. They've already, the same meeting I was at with the community, Councilmember Boykin was there to discuss, Osborne Road, the plan is for that road to be paved. And so the accessibility to that area is increasing. And it's kind of just anticipating the future of this area and the future of James Island. Its development is increasing the area, and so the prices are only going to get more and more expensive, the need's not going to go away. The need for public green space in a community that's going to be experiencing increased development pressures is very obvious, and I think this would give us an opportunity for connectivity and to have an epicenter within which we can then build connectivity out and connect it to existing infrastructure. It is right, it's maybe a 5-minute walk from Folly Road, so there is that ability to connect it into Folly Road, and so it's the combination of there's an immediate threat. This property is getting developed. It's in the heart of a historic district, a community that doesn't want this development, and it's going to have a significant impact on the community. And then can we use this as leverage to further increase accessibility and further increase pedestrian access in the area and use this as a launching pad? And so that's kind of where I see it. And that's where the connectivity aspect I feel is there.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Nora.
You discussed the considerable value historically of the land because of the Civil War events that occurred there. And you, mentioned, I think it was the Historic Charleston Foundation as a partner with you. Your match is not great. Why didn't you ask them for funds, or did you?
The Historic Charleston Foundation is already, they've already contributed a significant amount of work into the Beefield community, so they were the ones who funded all of the application process for submitting they worked with the Beefield to get the historic designation. They are working with them to pay for their historical marker. And so they've already kind of committed a significant amount of finances into the community. And so it was not financially, I certainly can go back to them, but that was where their contribution to the community as a whole has been thus far.
Question
Go ahead.
for either staff or whoever. Do we have a zoning map or at least a jurisdiction map available?
I don't have one on the slide, no ma'am. You're wondering how close City of Charleston is? Can you speak to that at all? Any clue how?
Let me see if I can find a map that.
I think you're wondering if they could annex in and get greater density.
Yeah, because, the whole point of the historic preservation, the new overlay district with the county is to ensure that the development pattern matches the surrounding settlement community development pattern. I'm not, overly concerned that something would occur here that is not in keeping with the rest of the community. But if there is contiguity possibility to either, James Island or City of Charleston, then that could change things. You said one of these properties just annexed.
Yeah, so it's, I don't know if I can, it's about 3 properties over, maybe 100 yards over, like kind of in this area. Is the property that's located, that's been annexed out and into the city. And they've also, while I think, personally in my professional opinion, the opportunity for planned unit developments is very much there within the S3 zoning, very much there within our historical districts. There's already been, pushbacks, as we saw last night at the county council meeting about reducing, the oversight of the Historic Preservation Commission. So, while I absolutely love what, the Historic Preservation Commission does and in full support of, I am not inclined to rely on that for the protection of these communities in the long term. And I think there needs to be projects like this to ensure that. And so that's kind of how I feel about it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interject for a moment. I will point out that while there was a meeting about the historic preservation ordinance last night, then that's not the issue before you guys today. And I will say that the Historic Preservation Commission, their role is not to prevent development, but to review whether or not the development that is proposed fits. And then therefore, that commission does not look at things such as density. They simply look at the design of what the developer wants to do. As long as that developer meets the S3 requirements for zoning, he's allowed to build whatever S3 allows for him to build. As far as the annexation, that's something that we're not sure of. And at the moment, we'd have to look further into whatever this property owner is proposing or contemplating, but nothing has been presented to the county on that fact yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it does abut City of Charleston properties on either side of the property.
The other problem, or not maybe not other problem, but a problem I see here is we also just don't have the money, and this doesn't strike me as an extraordinary opportunity at this moment. And maybe you could convince me otherwise over time. I don't know, but is it extraordinary somehow? Like, is there some reason why we should like reach and like go rework our allocations and all that on behalf of this property? Because that's what it's going to take to make it happen. And forward spend. And I'm also hearing kind of grumblings that the value is a little bit in question relative to perk and all that stuff.
Yeah, in terms of the valuation, I'm extremely confident of the valuation. The property that I mentioned that's been planned for the 16 homes development, it sold 2 years ago for $1.3 million. And it's I think 5 acres of developable land. So the majority of this property is developable, if not entirely of it. So from a valuation standpoint, I'm very confident about the value of it. In terms of the quality of the project, I would encourage you to go out there and step foot into the Beefield community. It's pretty. George Richardson, the president, he kind of refers to it's like a land, stepping back in time. It is. You walk in, you drive in, and it's a dirt road on James Island, which is pretty crazy, pretty phenomenal. Thinking about how developed the island is, and it's entirely dominated by live oaks. It's beautiful maritime forest. It's adjacent to Grimble Farms property, which is a long time conservation priority. From the Civil War aspect of it, it is in the center. It is I find it very moving, and that people physically died on that property, fighting for a community like Beefield to be able to own that land and be there and live on that land. And so being able to tell that story, having the opportunity to tell that story, I think would be pretty phenomenal. And just, I think if you also understand the history of the Beefield community especially over the last 10 years and the kind of the fights that they've been having to go through to maintain, their way of life and maintain their culture that we have already acknowledged is something of value via their historic designation, whether or not it's with, I'm sure everyone knows about the barrel and everything that happened with that, which was this bar that essentially opened up on the corner, and their patrons were blocking driveways, and dogs are pooping in people's yard, and it was causing this whole havoc for this very quiet community, and they were able to get and fight that and have that stop, and this would, and then along with their historic designation, this would be kind of further catalyzing and further building on that momentum. We've already had members of the community come forward that have not historically been involved, kind of people of my generation, and have volunteered their time to work and maintain the property. So it's kind of already galvanizing the community, and it hasn't even really happened yet. Just the thought of it is kind of motivating people. And so I think it really is a special place. I think it's a special community. I think we've acknowledged that by its designation, that it is a special community, and it's worth protecting. And from a funding standpoint, that's out of my purview to advise y'all on how to do that. That's not my, I don't want to overstep that. I would say that it's an unfortunate situation that the Urban Unincorporated Fund was one of the lower funded pots, considering the value of the land that is in, and the communities that are located within the Urban Unincorporated areas, which is predominantly our settlement communities. So I think, I don't think that I would hope that would not be a hindrance on y'all's valuing of this project and how important this project is to Charleston County and the local community.
Any more questions? Do I have a motion? Do I have anything?
I'll make a motion to approve and have discussion.
I'll second for some discussion.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Okay, discussion.
I think realistically, the use of this park, if it becomes so, would be by the B Field residents. I know it's talking about public access, but this would be their, potentially community center, community gardens. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I just think we need to realize it's like a little, essentially pocket park within a community. To your point, Beezer doesn't have some of the other projects we've seen the access available to that. Even if it's, the road gets paved and there's sidewalks there, I think realistically it's going to be their spot. Once again, I'm not saying that's a negative thing at all. I just think that that's realistically what we're looking at.
Good news, bad news. Next door, Grimble Gates will be developed at some point, which is 850 acres. Good news, bad news.
Or just news.
What's the good news?
Eric, you said something about small landowner. Do we have a little bit in that pot?
This part might be.
We do, only about
Used for that
$50,000 in
Gate,
small
or
landowner.
It might be swallowed up by it.
I think, when you all made the decision, I think it was back in January, to essentially table our forward spending policy that we were working on for a year. We said, well, let's kind of track projects and point out the ones that would not have been funded. This would have been one of those because Urban Incorporated is so forward spent. And then the score doesn't rate as exceptional, which still wouldn't have given them the full amount that they needed to secure this property. So, I would recommend, if you do vote to approve, there needs to be some recommendation on where this funding should come from, whether it's to continue to forward spend, which is still allowed under the rules that we're under, or maybe make some recommendation to the GAB on reallocation of funds, either to Urban Unincorporated or to the small landowner program, which this one would qualify for also. Of course, council would have to approve all that as well. But I think there should be some clarity if you do vote to approve on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, part of my consideration and approval is the fact that it is a settlement community, and they are under tremendous threat. We've done this in the Mount Pleasant area, Phillips community. We've done it, I think, twice at least. Mm-hmm. Similar, and yes, they are pretty much limited to the use of that community, which I think is a good thing, because of what it creates within that particular community. And so, I do have a concern with where we are with the funding in the urban unincorporated. I think you're correct that the settlement communities are probably mostly in the urban unincorporated area. And if we're going to see these types of requests to try to preserve parts of them for open space, we're going to have to really think about what the funding should be. So I don't have the answer there for the future, but I guess that's why I'm inclined to at least consider this for approval now is preservation of these communities. It's clearly important to the county as well. I mean, the county has created this historic district. Mount Pleasant tags along with that. We support it. So I don't know, I guess that's reason anyway for my consideration of this request.
Yeah, and I'll just say this project it follows very closely the model that was set by the Phillips Community Park as well as 7 Miles Park as well. So kind of following the precedents that Greenbelt is set with those projects as well.
And those were both fun. Those were several different projects, and one, in each community, it was several different projects to make the footprint of what they have now. And those are both drawn from varied pots, urban unincorporated and small landowner program, kind of mixed and matched.
So, Eric, how does that work if you said there's about 50,000 left in the small landowner program? We would make a recommendation that council incorporate that funding into this project. Is that what you were alluding to or suggesting?
What we talked about back during the 5-year plan review was potentially recapitalizing the small landowner program. It was originally funded for projects just like this, which are really directed at settlement communities, for properties, for land that's under 30 acres. And it also provides some of these neighborhood and community organizations the professional expertise and support of the Low Country Land Trust, who, just like this project is, they do all the work to get the property, put restrictions on it, help the organization with capacity building, and then transfer the property over to that organization. So to me, this is exactly what the small landowner program was made for, but there's only $50,000 left, and that's not one that can be forward spent. That money was originally, I think it was $1.4 million, was taken from rural funds and put into this small landowner program. And it can be property in either the urban or rural area, but it has to be under 30 acres. And then they also follow this model of having Low Country Land Trust support throughout the process until the end owner takes ownership. So if you wanted to fund it fully with small landowner, you would need to make a recommendation to county council to say so, as well as where that money should be moved from into the small landowner program. And how much, because we're probably going to have more of these projects coming through.
Is it possible to split the money between urban and rural? Whatever money we put into the small?
Sure. It's possible that could be your recommendation to council, maybe a percentage across the board from every allocation would go into the small landowner program. And of course, the GAB would also need to recommend that. County council ultimately would have to approve that.
Any suggestions, any motions?
We have a motion and a second.
We do,
Yeah.
so we move forward, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What was your answer?
Could we call for a roll call vote, please?
I am. Roll call.
Aye.
I got to pass for the moment. Abstain for the moment.
Go ahead.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Great.
I mean, that's simple.
Yeah.
Ayes have it.
Great. I'm glad. I was just going to come back with like some idea where the money was going to come from. That was the only
That's
change.
fine.
Mark, do we need each member to vote?
Go ahead, Beezer.
And it'd be up to the chair, and it's really not necessary. I believe at the moment, and it is three ayes and an abstention at the moment.
And so I have to vote, and I abstain too. So we got 3 ayes and 2.
So the motion carries with 3 votes in favor and 2 abstentions.
Right.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank y'all.
Well,
Gotta figure out how we're
we're
gonna
gonna
pay
do it. Well, the county's going to figure it out. The council has to figure it out, right? So that's one we throw upstairs, let them figure it out.
Okay.
That's kind of my thought, and not to mention the full GAB meeting.
Right.
Next project for your consideration is a minor improvements project from the town of Sullivan's Island, Station 26.5 Boardwalk. Boardwalk would be approximately 6 feet wide and 480 feet long. Would cost of $51,000 from Greenbelt, from town of Sullivan Island allocation, and they're offering $155,000 plus match, which represents 304%. And I've got Joe Henderson here, Deputy Administrator for the town of Sullivan's Island, to give his presentation. And while Joe's coming up, I'll pull up that presentation.
Everybody uses this. I'm a big proponent of all the beach access.
There you are, Joe.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Where's Andy Binky?
He is off island right now, but he's still at town hall. Has not retired yet.
Tell him we miss him.
Let's try to do that.
I sure will.
Let's go. Let's be quick.
Thank you all. I'm Joe Henderson with the town of Sullivan's Island. I appreciate the opportunity to present this project to you for the FY24 cycle, which is, as per normal, construction of a public boardwalk, Station 26.5 in Bayonne Street. This is one of 28 public beach access points, which is shown here on the overview. And circled there, highlighted, is the approximate location of Station 26.5. These boardwalks, these access points provide free beach access and parking to 300 to 500,000 visitors annually, and they are continually falling apart on us. And so that's why we use these funds each year to rebuild those. We think the project meets several of the Greenbelt program objectives, which is preserving natural resources and green spaces, providing minor improvement for passive green space activities, raised boardwalk construction through the town's accreted land, which is under the protection of the Low Country Land Trust, and also providing safe public access to oceans and marshes. So a little bit about the project. As Eric mentioned, this is going to be a wood construction with composite decking, which lengthens the life of these boardwalks for us. We've done this for the past several years. No handrails needed because it's only going to be 12 inches to 18 inches from grade. It's going to be 6 feet wide and 480 feet long, as mentioned. So here are some of the problems that we have with all of our boardwalks. We have localized flooding after normal rain events, and it's impacting the island more and more simply because Sullivan's Island's an accreted land and accreting beach, and so as the beach accretes, then we get more flooding between the residential property and the berm of the beach. So the project estimate currently is at $206,000 for the construction at 480 linear feet. So this $51,000 will contribute to that. Every little bit makes a difference for us. As the other part of our match, we're also replacing the existing 850 feet of boardwalk and possibly extending that another 100 linear feet to the berm of the beach. So as these dunes accrete, we need to extend the boardwalks on out to get folks to the beach without getting their feet wet. So the total project expense for constructing this boardwalk is $461 estimated, and so as I mentioned, every little bit helps. We've had ample community support, not only from the surrounding residents, but also town council giving their full endorsement. Also, we have a letter of support in our application from the Low Country Land Trust, who's the holder of the conservation easement. And that's pretty much it. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
I'm on your boardwalks all the time. I think they're great, so helpful. Can't imagine getting through some of those spots without them. I motion for approval.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, you got it, get out.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. No.
Oh, I just said before you open the mouth. You have your hello. Right?
Next project for your consideration is Town of Mount Pleasant Way, Park Avenue Boulevard, and Carolina Park Boulevard Trails. I know James has all the information in here that I was going to present, so I'm going to turn it straight over to him.
I don't know where you went.
Oh.
It's sitting back there.
I see him. He's right outside.
Okay.
Have him get in there, no.
And Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I'm recusing myself from this item.
You gotta go?
I'm recusing myself from this item.
Okay.
James Aton.
Good morning. I think it's still morning here.
Barely.
We're getting close. I will hopefully be finished by the time the morning ends. Again, so stated, my name is James Aton. I'm the Deputy Director of the Capital Projects and Transportation Division with the Town of Mount Pleasant, and we have the Carolina Park and Park Avenue Boulevard Mount Pleasant Way Trail System. As you'll see, a little different from the other applications that you've received today. This is the spokes portion of the Greenbelt's Hubs and Spokes project, and in an effort to be expeditious, these are just overviews that you have seen. This is your program, so I will breeze through these and get to the meat of the presentation. This is just talking about the Mount Pleasant Way as a whole, meeting the goals of the Greenbelt Commission and other regional plans. This again is just a quick graphic of the Mount Pleasant Way spine route, 47 miles, so that'll be a number that I'll reference here for this specific application. It's been master planned, it's been adopted, we have sought and been successful in previous applications that are going through design. Here are a few photos of existing segments, a few photos of existing secondary routes, as well as green belt and greenway routes, as well as the parklets that are along the proposed route. So getting into the specific project, this is the Park Avenue Boulevard and Carolina Park Boulevard Trail. It's a proposed 8,300 linear foot project. It does require allocation of property or recreational easements from 11 properties. And the town is requesting a total of $620,200 for those purchases, with a match of over 100%, $828,800. And I'll break that out here in a few slides. So again, all of those properties that are proposed to be impacted are commercial properties. All have been reached out to and have been corresponding with the town in relation to the design of this project. Right-of-way services within the request is $147,000, while the actual cost for that right-of-way or recreational easement, $473,200. As far as public meetings that were held, we had our typical online surveys that we host, as well as an in-person meeting. The in-person meeting had about the same amount that we have show up for most of these events, just over 15. But the online survey did have a good showing of 163 respondents, the majority of which supported the project. And these are some of those quotes, snippets from that. Let's make it happen. Wonderful idea. Love to see more of these projects. The only opposition that we did receive, I'll call that out, was really concerns about golf carts on this path system. We get this as a main concern for any of the Mount Pleasant Way section. But for this one in particular, one of the ways that we're addressing that is we're working with Charleston County through one of their pilot projects for resurfacing of warm mix asphalt in place for Carolina Park Boulevard and Park Avenue Boulevard, where will be reallocating lane space to develop bike lanes and or sharrow situations on those roads, and as such reducing the overall speed limit, making them eligible for golf carts to ride on that roadway. So that is one way to address the main concerns that we heard from the public. As far as connections, this is a slew of the connections that will be made. Obviously this area is developed. You can see in the plan right here, where across from the Wando Library, that's the last owned parcel by Carolina Park Development. The town has received a conceptual plan through our design review team process for that to be developed into a town center style development. So a lot of good activity for those adjacent residential areas to access it through this path. Currently the sidewalk, while it does exist on one side, is disjointed on the other. It connects to existing multi-use paths, both in neighborhood and part of the Mount Pleasant Way section through here, and recreational facilities at Park West and the Carolina Park recreation facilities, both of which are two of the three largest town recreation complexes that we currently have in use. And then to mention the schools that we connect to: Wando High School, Carolina Park Elementary, Cario, Pinckney, and Laurel Hill schools over in the Park West area, as well as our Oceanside Magnet School up Faison Road. And then the Wando Library, which isn't technically a school, but still has great educational purposes. So summary of the slide, again, proposed 8,300 linear feet, back to that 47 miles. So this is about 1.5 miles. So we're looking at 3% of that overall spine route. So that's one thing I really want to highlight for you guys today, is that this is a significant amount of that spine route that's come through in one single application. It connects to a slew of different both recreational, educational, and commercial needs. And then the last thing to highlight as well is we do have some great public-private partnerships that have come out as part of this investigation. The Carolina Park Development has donated the property associated with this path alignment on their property, as well as the adjacent Jeep automobile dealership, which is just to the north of Costco. They have donated the property as well. So those are included within the match that you've seen in the application. And then furthermore, since the submittal of the application, the town has engaged in further public-private partnership with the Carolina Park Development, receiving $5,000 to go towards the design of this project. So timeline-wise, we have sought a scope and fee from one of our on-call consultants, Mead and Hunt, to go through the design of this, which should take about a year, 12 months to 16 months to complete and permit. And then the town has several grants that are currently either under review or will be submitted between the USDOT grants as well as local state programs like the South Carolina Recreational Trails grant that this project will be eligible for funding. And that is my quick presentation. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Any motions?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
This is to the gentleman. In its entirety, this project is nothing short of spectacular. I have no idea how you guys have been able to do all this, and I applaud Mount Pleasant for doing this.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion with that?
I motion to accept.
In a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric.
That's all we have for you. We'll see you again probably at 9:30, but I'll be sending an email out with that on October 11th, Wednesday, October 11th. But we'll get you the information, the updated information from City of North Charleston in advance of that meeting.
Okay, thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Nice.
I had to hit that, right?
Yep.
You really
Made it official. I'm gonna go look at Beefield.